This weekend, the biggest names in basketball will descend on the Bay Area for yet another All-Star weekend. Armed with a new goofy 4-team format, the league office is hoping to reinvigorate the flagging All-Star game. Every year we complain about the fall of the All-Star game, a storied tradition that is now an overhyped farce. We all know the problems. No names in the dunk contest, turnstile defense from checked out All-Stars, the skills competition, all that just terrible. It's yet another example of the current generation slagging off a core part of league history. Or is it? I'd argue that's not the All-Star game that has changed, or even the All-Stars themselves. Instead, this all happened because everything that changed outside the game. So why did All-Star Weekend fall off? Let's find out. Before we start, I want to tick off a couple of common scapegoats. These are what you usually hear on a podcast or from a TV segment, and while I don't think any of these people are wrong, I think they're coming at it from the wrong perspective. Some people want to blame the European wave of superstars over the last decade of play. This isn't part of their culture and see the game as a pointless exercise to sleepwalk through. I disagree. For one, let's not act like the American superstars are treating this event like a Game 7. Second, the problems of the All-Star game predate the last decade. Go back 15, 20 years, you'll find pundits complaining about the decline of the event when we had fewer international All-Stars. Lastly, while Europeans largely don't have All-Star games, they do play friendlies. European football teams frequently tour the US or East Asia just for this reason. They even play a kind of friendly known as a testimonial that's similar to an All-Star game. Basically, it's kind of final send-off for a club legend comprised of former teammates and usually supports that player's charity. A few NBA players participated in a similar event for Goran Dragic a couple years ago. Honestly, I'd really like to see it brought to American sports. Just think of what LeBron or Durant's lineups might look like. My point is that we shouldn't blame international stars for ruining an American tradition. The other thing we often hear is that it's a generational problem. The younger players don't care about the history of the All-Star game and see it as a chance to screw around with half-court heaves and cool dunks. In the 80s and 90s, the top players treated the event like it was everything, using the All-Star game as a stage to show up their rivals. It was their pure competitive spirit that made the All-Star game an honored tradition that we've now desecrated. This again is false. I'll admit that you go through old All-Star game tapes and those guys are giving it their all, especially by modern standards. Still, that has nothing to do with their commitment to the game. So why are they trying hard? Economic incentive. Remember, in the 80s and 90s, we're talking about a pre-internet, pre-league pass era, with only a few nationally broadcasted games, all but reserved for the Sixers, Knicks, Lakers, Bulls, and Celtics. The All-Star game has been nationally televised since 1964. If you were a star on a small market team, this was one of the few times the whole country would see you before the postseason. In an era of smaller money and limited sponsorship, of course these guys were going to ball out. They had serious money on the line. In a digital world where all of these guys are celebrities on fixed max deals that we have instant access to from our phones, the All-Star game is no longer needed for promotion. Speaking of, that's kind of what the event is for now. Promotion. Remember, the NBA is a business. All these guys are employees coming together from across the country. So let's call All-Star Weekend what it really is. The sports world's biggest corporate retreat. All these guys gather in one city to hang out, do media, and meet with sponsors. Not the place to go to work on the court in a do-or-die game. It's a place to mingle. We can't, and shouldn't, expect guys to treat this like a Game 7. They're out of their element, playing with guys they might have just met after days of signing autographs and posing for pictures. And look, I don't really think we even want these guys to ball out. As a fan of the Tibbs-led Knicks, I want Towns and Brunson to spend as much time as possible resting for the playoffs. Think about it. Would you take an improved All-Star game if it meant your favorite star got hurt? I didn't think so. The All-Star game reminds me a bit of college bowl games and conference championships. I never really got the point of postseason bowls, especially now that we have a modern playoff system. You have a team like Oregon, win the Big Ten, and yet the national champions, Ohio State, can't even get into that game. So if that's the case, why does the conference title even mean anything anymore? Still, there are these things that we carry on with out of tradition and because somebody paid to put their name on it. We have bowl games because we've always had bowl games. Not because anybody really wants to see two squads of red shirts playing a game that doesn't matter after all the noteworthy players have declared for the draft. My one suggestion for saving All-Star Weekend is to change with the times. Go international. Have All-Star Weekend in London, Paris, Tokyo, Rio, wherever. If All-Star Weekend is about promotion, then we shouldn't fight that. If a star player balls out in front of a foreign audience, that only raises their profile to a brand new market. Bottom line, I want this event to matter. All-Star Weekend matters. It's a time to celebrate a sport that we love. It's how we mark the home stretch of the playoffs, and a time to take stock on the state of the league. I know I spend most of this video talking about how All-Star Weekend is basically a commercial, but it can be so much more than that. Back in 1964, the first generation of NBA stars, Bill Russell, Jerry West, Wilt, you name it, were sitting in the locker room of the old Boston Garden, and they came together to demand the owners recognize their rights to unionize alongside a list of demands. With national broadcast cameras on the game for the very first time in history, the owners acquiesced. Basically, they created the player empowerment era right there in that locker room. So we shouldn't underrate this event. I love this league, but it has real problems. With football and baseball media asleep, all eyes will be on the NBA and Adam Silver this weekend. What will they do? Let's see.